Welcome to Let's Talk, a place for straight talk, hard topics, and smart people. I'm Sue Wallace, and today I'm talking with Mike Maker. Welcome, Mike. Glad you're here.
Sue, how are you?
Great. Mike, I'm really happy to have you here
Thanks for
today.
having me.
I can tell you Flywheel was an exciting discovery for Voximetry recently. We can talk more about that, but I wanted to just get you to share with other people, who the heck is Flywheel? What do we
Sure
need to know
thing.
about this company?
So Flywheel is a imaging first data management and compute management platform. So we really focus on DICOM, but you can bring in any data you want to the platform. We can index it, we can curate it, and we can automate your workflows end to end just to really accelerate your science.
And tell me just a little bit before we go more into Flywheel and some of the great things I know you do. Who is Mike Maker? Can you just briefly, what's your background?
Great question. So I started my career after studying engineering. I started my career at Novartis. So I was in an imaging lab within the ophthalmology department. I moved into clinical translational imaging, where I kind of became therapeutic area and modality agnostic.
Yeah.
And then joined Invicro, which was an imaging service company. So I went from moving data in one lab, data at an enterprise, to now at then at Invicro, to helping all pharma.
Yeah.
And now at Flywheel, I'm helping people, putting tools in their hands so they could do what I used to do for them.
Yeah, I think this is why there's so many good things happening at Flywheel, is they've got people who have walked in the shoes.
Right.
I think of the people you're serving now.
Yeah.
So just the full disclosure, Voximetry recently signed a partnership with Flywheel, and we needed to do that because while we could use your services, we wanted you to go to one step further for us. And you did, which is amazing. I highly recommend them. They'll solve your problems. But through your lens, what was that problem? What were you able to do?
Sure. So, whenever we're handling, you guys are doing a dosimetry services for clinical partners. So you have PHI laden data, and that's always something we need to be very careful with. So the solution we implemented for you was a way for your clinical partners to submit their data. We de-identify that to allow you to work in non-identified data. We've done that by encrypting the header information. We don't have a lookup table, so there's no way to piece it back together unless you have the secret keys. And then after your analysis complete, you post back to your customer an identified report, which we're enabling that identification so that the submitter knows exactly who went in, what came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think for us, what was so exciting about the partnership is we asked you to go beyond the normal de-identification, re-identification tools. That most of that is done in DICOM headers of some form, right? You've got RT structure sets or RT dose, lots of image headers go around with information that can be removed and replaced. But we said we want to send reports, we want to send PDFs, we want to send non-editable documents, we want to send digitally signed documents.
Right.
And that isn't something people are used to re-identifying. Right?
Correct.
So was that a challenge for you?
It certainly was, but we have a scientific solutions engineering team, which really jumped on with both hands, tackled the problem. It was able to use the information once they decrypt the header to apply information into that PDF based on what the patient identifying information.
We're excited about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course.
The other reason I invited you to Let's Talk today is I think it's really important for the theranostics community to understand what Flywheel can do for clinical trials.
Right.
And I think in the background, a lot of what you do can support the pharma companies directly or the CROs.
Right.
But that's benefiting all of us in the community. So I wanted them to understand the kinds of tools that are starting to be available to support these clinical trials. So can you tell us a little bit about that side?
So we now offer a 21 CFR Part 11 validated instance to enable, the controlled access and tracking of clinical trial data. So you can bring your data in from your CRO and keep it in a compliant platform, do your primary or secondary analysis there. And we enable you with a document package and audit trail, to produce the document package you need to go to the regulatory body. So you can really self-manage that imaging data on the clinical trial. We're also partnering with some large, EDC companies to try to get that data back to the customer faster, the imaging data, so they can get an early read in their own house, rather than waiting for database lock and all that, to really understand what's happening in their trial. In theranostics, picture's worth 1,000 words, also worth $1,000. People are spending real money on these. They want those images back, and they want to be able to analyze them to their liking.
So if you are imaging site. You're participating in a clinical trial, but you're at the clinic side with the patients. Would those people be interfacing directly to these solutions from Flywheel, or is it more driven through the CROs and the pharma?
No, we can do both. So we have engagements with academic medical centers that are running clinical trials, and they're having their sites submit directly to Flywheel. We can apply as needed de-identification to make sure that nothing slips through the cracks. So when the data comes from the site, it lands in a project. That data is reviewed, QC'd. We can send a query back to the site, say, hey, you said this is subject 1, it's subject 2. Which is it? And we can clarify that and then move that data through a workflow downstream once it's been verified.
So do you have an interface that, like, whether maybe I'll say different interfaces to the tools, whether you are the clinic or the CRO or the pharma, do they have kind of their own custom views of the tools because they have different needs?
So for now, that's mostly managed via permission. So we have really granular control over what is available to the customer. So depending on the role and depending on the responsibility that they're for, we can set their permissions, which turn off tools and visibility to things. So they would log in as a submitter, really just have that access to upload to that one project. So it really simplifies the process. They can't click on the wrong place. They drag and drop their data and they're off to the races.
So for us, I'm honestly just thinking about this right now because we were very focused initially in our discussions on supporting getting data to and from the clinical sites for our services. But I'm realizing, as you know, we do a lot of work to support clinical trials with dosimetry services. Is there a role where we should be thinking about plugging our dosimetry reports straight into something like a Flywheel database for the CROs or the pharmas, rather than right now we send it to them and they do what they do with it, but we could have a more direct interface.
It's definitely something that we should consider. I think there's a world where, we could be the imaging management arm of a clinical trial. So the data flows through us, torch is applied, all the beautiful analysis comes back and then gets aggregated back with the remaining clinical information.
Mike, the reason I felt really comfortable partnering with Flywheel is my perception, at least, was that these guys are on top of what it means to manage PHI safely. And more importantly, on top of the ever-changing, compliance rules, especially GDPR coming out of Europe, that you not only have to comply, you got to stay compliant. It changes all the time. And I just thought, I don't need to be an expert in this. I need an expert friend.
Sure.
And that's why we came to you. Can you talk a little bit about, is there something unique in what Flywheel is doing to keep people safe?
So the way we solved the problem for Voximetry was, many folks have a lookup table where you have the PHI and a patient ID, and, should that and the data fall somehow into the wrong hands, it's very re-identifiable. So the way we solved this was we had asymmetric encryption. So you have someone that encrypts the data, triggers the encryption. Now your team is using that encrypted data, so there's no visible PHI. And then another team member is triggering the decryption. So you don't have one person that can do both. So there's no way for one actor to accidentally reveal the PHI. So it's a really controlled way to do this without a way to just, accidentally produce PHI everywhere, right? Which keeps you all safe, which keeps us safe, and most importantly, keeps your patients safe.
So you probably have a better vision for where a company like Voximetry could go with our interface with customers for services. Where do you think we should go?
So in talking with you and your team, one of the really strong benefits of Flywheel is the automation of workflows. So we can have a little bit of logic where if, a spec hits your system with an associated CT, we can trigger some automation when those data arrive. And I can see a world where we co-develop an automated version of Torch such that the settings you want to run for a given study. You submit that settings file. Anytime pairs of data land on your platform, it goes out and back. Nobody has to touch anything. And then you really get to upload, download, done.
From the clinic's perspective, what would they be experiencing if we
had? So they would have turnaround in minutes.
And they would just upload it would start a fully PHI, normal image data set. They would just drag and drop it to a folder.
The system would trigger automation and it would all happen automatically. I'd suppose you would want to have, once over, just one set of human eyes on it to make sure, the values are reasonable, if nothing else, before releasing it back to the clinic. but to the clinic, it could be as quick as minutes.
Well, I don't disagree with it. End-to-end automation has been in our vision for a long time with Sparch. We're not there yet, right? But I think it's a very exciting endpoint. Yes, we can get there, I think. Yeah, it's all about partners. Right. Thanks for joining me and Mike today. Let's talk again soon.